Picture this. It's a sweltering hot summer day. You've just finished mowing the lawn, or maybe you're out walking the dog, and you do what any sensible person does. You make a beeline for the deepest, coolest patch of shade you can find under that massive oak or maple tree in your neighborhood. You lean back against the trunk, close your eyes, and just enjoy the relief. But while you're standing there, I want you to really think about what's happening inside that solid wood right behind your back. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking a journey from our modern backyards all the way back to the ancient origins of tree bioengineering. We are looking at one of the most successful, complex, and oldest technologies on Earth.
Okay, let's dive right into the central mystery here. It's something we completely take for granted. You are sitting under a giant structure that is literally defying gravity. I mean, how exactly does a tree pump hundreds of gallons of water straight up into the air, sometimes over 100 feet high, without a single moving mechanical part? There's no motor in there, there's no heart pumping away down in the roots. So how does a giant piece of wood actually pull this off?
The answer is an incredible biological thriller plot known as the cohesion tension theory. And the craziest part? The primary engine driving this massive water transport system doesn't start at the bottom. It starts at the very top of the tree. It all begins with evaporation.
Let's break this transpirational pull down step by step. First, water evaporates from tiny pores on the underside of the leaves called stomates. That process is called transpiration. In fact, 97 to 98% of the water a tree takes up is just evaporated right back into the air this way. Now, as that water leaves, it creates a vacuum. And because water molecules really like to stick together, that vacuum forcefully pulls on the water molecules right behind them. This creates a continuous microscopic column of tension all the way down the trunk and deep into the soil. The absolutely crucial thing to understand here is that if this continuous column of water breaks, say an arborist drills a hole into the trunk, that vacuum is broken. That specific plumbing line completely halts until the tree can slowly repair it.
Deep inside the trunk is where we find the cellular superhighway, making all of this magic happen. Right under the bark is an incredibly thin, microscopic layer of living tissue called the vascular cambium. You can think of the cambium as a tiny, non-stop factory. Driven by hormones like auxin, it continuously divides and it produces two very different, highly specific types of plumbing pipes for the tree.
So this microscopic factory builds an incredible two-way highway. On the inside, the cambium produces xylem. On the outside, it produces phloem. Now, xylem cells are strictly for moving water and minerals up. And here is the truly fascinating part. To work perfectly, mature xylem cells actually undergo programmed cell death. They literally die, leaving behind rigid, hollow tubes that eventually build up to form the solid structural heartwood of the tree. The phloem, on the flip side, consists of living cells. Their job is to transport the sweet sugars and hormones created by the leaves down to the roots. But they only live for about a season before they're crushed outward to become the tree's protective outer bark.
Okay, so we know what's happening up in the trunk, but we really need to look underground. If I asked you to draw a tree's root system, you'd probably draw a deep mirror image of the branches above, right? It's what we're all taught, but arborists use a much better analogy for reality. It's like a wine glass sitting on a dinner plate. The stem of the glass is the trunk, and the plate is the root system. 99% of a tree's roots do not dive deep into the earth. They spread out incredibly wide and horizontally, mostly staying in the top 3 feet of soil. Why? Because that's where the oxygen and the moisture are.
These shallow roots are heavily specialized to absorb that water from the soil using a process called osmosis. The root cells have extremely thin walls and these elongated hairs just to maximize their surface area. Because the roots are packed full of sugars and minerals, they actually have a lower concentration of water than the damp soil surrounding them. So nature takes its course, and water naturally moves across the membrane into the roots to balance things out. This is what feeds that massive transpirational pull we talked about earlier.
But the roots definitely don't do all this heavy lifting alone. Almost all tree roots rely on a mind-blowing symbiotic relationship with underground mycorrhiza fungi. These fungi actually attach themselves right to the roots and spread a massive invisible web of tiny threads through the soil. This underground network increases the tree's absorptive surface area by an astonishing 100 to 1,000 times. And it's a trade-off. In exchange for helping the tree absorb hard-to-reach minerals, the tree feeds the fungi some of those sweet sugars it's making up in the leaves.
To really appreciate this incredibly complex system of cambium, xylem, phloem, and shallow roots, we have to understand exactly where it came from, because the environment always shapes the physiology. Let's rewind a whopping 380 million years to the epic alien landscape of the Devonian period.
Back then, CO2 levels in the atmosphere were fluctuating wildly, and early plants were fiercely competing for sunlight. This drove a massive evolutionary arms race to see who could grow taller faster.
Enter Archaeopteris, widely considered by scientists to be nature's very first true tree. It was an extinct type of plant known as a progymnosperm. Now, Archaeopteris was revolutionary because it invented that bifacial vascular cambium we looked at earlier. Before this guy came along, plants just grew from the tips. If the tip broke off, well, it died. But Archaeopteris figured out how to grow continuously in both height and girth. It laid down layers of strong, conifer-like wood to fully support that massive, gravity-defying weight. Some of these ancient pioneers actually reached 100 feet tall and lived for decades.
And Archaeopteris didn't just grow on Earth, it actively reshaped it. To support its massive height, it had to develop deep root systems that literally terraformed Devonian soils. They broke up solid rocks and created deep soil profiles for the very first time in Earth's history. Up top, it developed flat, webbed leaves to capture maximum sunlight. But there's a catch. Big leaves lose a lot of water to evaporation. So, what was its brilliant solution? It invented the deciduous habit. When seasonal droughts hit, it simply shed its leafy branches to save water, and then regrew them later from perennial buds. It was a total game changer.
But despite all these highly advanced physical features, Archaeopteris still reproduced like a primitive fern. It used spores instead of seeds. This meant its reproduction was entirely held hostage by wet, swampy environments where those freely shed spores could survive. This is a stark contrast to modern trees, which eventually evolved seeds. Seeds were a protective, nutrient-packed innovation that finally allowed trees to break free from the swamps and colonize almost every diverse habitat on dry land.
Take birch catkins, for example. Modern trees use the wind, or they actively recruit insects, to spread their pollen far and wide. And to prevent self-pollination, which is just terrible for long-term genetic diversity, a single tree will often stagger the exact timing of when its male flowers release pollen and when its female flowers are actually receptive. It's an incredibly synchronized, delicate dance with the environment to ensure a strong, diverse future for the forest.
Let's fast forward back to today. You might be wondering, why does all this ancient cell biology and Devonian evolution actually matter to us right now? Well, it's because we heavily rely on these modern giants to provide absolutely crucial environmental services. They cool our air, they manage our stormwater, and understanding their deep physiology is really the only way we can properly care for them in our modern, paved urban cities. For example, let me let you in on a little arborist secret. These tree care experts use direct knowledge of cell anatomy every single day. Remember that hormone auxin we mentioned? It's produced in the tips of the branches, and it continuously flows downward, chemically stunting the growth of the lateral side buds below it. This is a process called apical dominance, and it's exactly why trees grow a central, pointing leader. So, when an arborist makes a highly precise pruning cut to remove a branch tip, they aren't just shaping the tree, they are literally removing the source of that chemical inhibitor. The lateral buds suddenly wake up, and boom, you get a thicker, bushier branch. Understanding this physiology also explains exactly why city life is so incredibly brutal on trees. In healthy soil, there is a perfect air-water balance in the pores, which allows the roots to breathe oxygen. And yes, they absolutely need oxygen to survive. But in urban environments, paving and constant foot traffic cause heavy soil compaction, literally suffocating those root systems. Even worse, when we dump tons of road salt in the winter, it washes straight into the soil. Remember our friend osmosis? Well, if the soil becomes saltier than the inside of the root, a devastating reverse osmosis occurs. The salt literally sucks the water right out of the tree's roots, dehydrating and killing the cells from the ground up.
So, from the microscopic water columns being pulled by a vacuum to an ancient ancestor that literally terraformed the Earth's soil, the tree standing in your backyard is so much more than just a block of wood and some leaves. It is a highly integrated, continuously operating masterpiece of biological engineering that has been perfecting its craft for nearly 400 million years. The next time you sit down under a tree to cool off, I really hope you can feel that ancient pulse of water rushing up right behind you. It makes you wonder, what other ancient, invisible technologies are quietly running the world right in our own backyards? Wild, but true.